Might as well start
I'll try
some
to do it for today.
links. Yeah,
The
well,
the capture card has a line in. I might be able to actually finagle it with a splitter for next week, so that the audio that it's capturing is analog, separate from the HDMI, and I can split it off and go to my headphones and not have to listen to myself because I don't like listening to myself.
you do that in real time, real life
I
all the
make the
time.
rest of you listen. Yes. I will have enough luggage space to bring the bondage tape too. Then you're all in trouble.
I don't want to know.
At Asia BSDCon one year, a viewer came up and was like, I noticed you have trouble getting people to do interviews and so on. So here, have this. And it's a roll of black tape, but it's like the tape is not very sticky, but you just wrap it. And it's for the bedroom, but it works. It works well for tying people's arms to chairs.
Okay. Oh dear. Yeah, things like that. So let me check the mailbox. No, nothing yet. I hear someone, which is not you. Oh my god, I'm hearing voices. Who's that talking? Is that me talking? No. Suddenly I hear people talking. Great,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
going
Are you
insane.
hearing the audio out of my headset?
Yeah,
That's not great, but okay.
as long as it's not on tape.
Kind of would be. I don't know how the microphone would be picking up what's in my ears. Like it's literally in my ears, but anyway.
Yeah. Maybe it's too loud or...
Well, I understand he's hearing it over the mic. I'm just understanding why the mic is picking up something that's inside my ears.
Yeah, now it's gone again. I just
Oh yeah, I
thought
closed
to...
the video.
Oh, yeah. Well, you wouldn't normally do that. You wouldn't play a video on the show. And even if you would, it's okay if I hear it. If only I hear it. Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I'm just concerned that the monitors will leak through into the microphone as well. I think that credential theft thing is not a Windows bug.
Oh, a colleague of mine was updating the lab workstations today, which had a 2-year backlog from Windows updates not installed. And some of these have dependencies between each other, and it's like, I had to roll back this update because the other one isn't finished yet, and the other didn't work, so I'm rolling half of the changes back, and he was like pulling his hair.
Yeah, I know the ones at our the college I taught at were like that because they're deep frozen. They automatically, when you reboot them,
Reset.
they go back to how they were at the beginning of the lab, so that no changes are persistent, and so they never get the Windows updates. So if they get infected, it's easy. You reboot and it comes back, but
Yeah.
then it just gets reinfected, and you
Yeah, we had that
have
a
to
couple
reboot
of
it like
years
every
ago.
5 minutes.
Yeah, we had those controller cards do that, but then we
So
got
they
new
used to use the
hardware
controller
installed.
card way with a read-only. There was a read-only disk full of images that they would write
Mhm.
onto the writable disk. But in the next generation of them, they did a software solution.
Yeah, something like that. But
It was basically a Windows rootkit that wrote all the changes to a temporary location and then forgot them at reboot.
right, yeah,
Similar to how a VM would work, basically.
yeah.
Wow, this is going to be difficult when I can hear myself.
Just don't listen to yourself.
The problem is I can't.
Yeah, it's just it's very
Mhm.
pervasive.
All right, ready to start? Because we should get going to
Mm.
get done in time.
What do you think about the title?
I don't know.
Okay, that's a.
Oh, sure.
um,
That title will work fine for me.
okay.
I don't care about titles. Rakai will yell at you about
You're
the
saying
titles.
that now, but all right.
I've never been in charge of the title, so I generally don't even look at them.
You aren't entitled. Anyway, because then I
Exactly.
can use it in the intro parts.
And I might even remember to switch the shot properly this week. We did the whole first news segment of the show last week with just our faces without the websites. Whoops.
Well, it's people, the listeners and watchers have to cope with that.
right.
But it's
Well, the website's not that much to look at anyway. But anyway,
yeah.
ready?
Yep.
And recording.
BSD Now, episode 194, Demonic Plans, recorded May 17th, 2017. Hi, I'm your host, Benedikt Reuschling,
And I'm Alan Jude.
and we have another great episode prepared for you today, so we should get right into our headlines for this week, which is the FreeBSD project status report from the first quarter of 2017, January to March, and there's a couple of things in there, so walk us through that, Alan.
Yes, the intro is pretty entertaining from Benjamin Kudak. He says, while a few of these projects indicate that they are Plan B or attempt number 3, many are still hewing to the original plans, and all have produced impressive results. So enjoy this vibrant collection of reports covering the first quarter of 2017.
Yeah, the intro
so it starts
part is
off with the
always
regular
fun
team
and
reports.
entertaining.
So the core team posts update on what they've been working on, including the new FreeBSD members thing and disabling the finger service. The FreeBSD Foundation has an update on what they've been working on, including sponsoring 168 different commits, funding the CFU Mass and Blacklisty projects, and lots of other things, and promoting FreeBSD at conferences like FOSDEM, Scale, Asia BSD Con, and FOSS Asia, and then also promoting other conferences that are coming up like BSDCan, Scale, Usenix Lisa, VBSDCon, EuroBSDCon, and the call for papers for those. They help promote our Google Summer of Code projects and try to get more students to sign up. They did a new Faces of FreeBSD story, set up a marketing partnership with Usenix and SNIA, and then we had the FreeBSD Storage Summit at Usenix SNIA, or Usenix Fast, sorry.
Yeah, you went to that one?
Yes, I went to the storage one. It was a very useful gathering of very smart people. And lots more stuff.
Yeah, we always have a couple of things to talk about, especially, or not only in the first quarter, but each quarter there's a lot of activity in those, foundation and core, and also the other teams that we have. But it's not only team reports; it's also projects.
Right, but just before that, the remaining team reports, we have the ports team reports that the number of ports is now just 500 shy of 30,000.
Oh yeah, we're
That's
getting
a lot
there.
of ports.
Yeah. Slowly but steadily.
They added a new uses for Samba to remove the long outdated Samba 3.6 ports and replace them with all the modern versions. And then the release engineering team has announced the schedule for FreeBSD 11.1.
Oh yeah, that's coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting, and people get a lot of bumps in their favorite software in their ports. So the latest things are listed there, at least for the first quarter.
Yep.
Yeah, ports is always very active and have very detailed numbers to present. Number of commits and people that got commit bits, and there's a lot of activity in the port string, of course. And the other team there is release engineering.
We just talked about that one.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm a little behind.
Cover the next item?
Yeah, so we have the project section. The first one is Ceph on FreeBSD. So this one is a continuation on a report that's in the project's status update before this one. And this is basically an update about it. What Ceph is a distributed object store and file system designed to provide excellent performance, reliability, and scalability. And there's a couple of work ongoing to make that work with FreeBSD, especially with storage nodes that are running ZFS, which will be interesting. And there's a report in here listing what currently is working and parts that are not yet finished, and some open tasks.
So there's now a port, net/ceph-devel, that will install most of the tools. There's not yet a port for the Ceph Fuse module, but you can get that. Hopefully see one of those in April. The Ceph Fuse module works. It allows you to mount a Ceph file system on a FreeBSD system and perform your normal file system operations. And you can use the ceph-disk command and prepare and activate a file store based on ZFS. And then the RBD, which is the Rados block device, is how you would actually use zvols to back a block store. So that this one, I think, is how you would actually do ZFS backed by multiple physical machines. Or more importantly, VMs backed by multiple ZFS machines.
Yeah, the endpoints basically where this... Yeah. Because it's all distributed, but at some point you have to store it on a disk eventually.
Well, part of the idea with Ceph is that each block can be stored on more than one ZFS node. So if you have 5 ZFS servers, you can make sure every block's stored on at least 2 of them. So even if a whole ZFS machine goes away, all of your VMs can keep running.
Yeah, you have the redundancy in the system.
But you can also basically load balance across many ZFS machines and get higher VM performance. They've also managed to get rid of pretty much all of the Linux-isms, other than a dependency on Bash. It doesn't have as much of the Linux-specific bits in it anymore. So other than the fact that it currently relies on a Fuse module, it's actually coming along very nicely. So the remaining to be done parts are a KRDB, which is a kernel driver for the block device thing, so that you can not have to use Fuse. Basically, what they've looked at so far, it looks like it might be close enough to geom-gate that they'll be able to make a version, use that as a template to very rapidly get us a kernel module to be able to have a kernel driver instead of have to use Fuse. And then for the backing store, FreeBSD's asynchronous I/O API is different than Linux's, and there's some discussion about the AIO cancel command not working with all device types and how that will impact Fuse.
Okay, so that needs work. All right. Yeah, so if people are interested, I think it's already in a state where people could test it a little bit and provide a little feedback. You can find more details in the report. The next one is OpenBSM update. So what OpenBSM is a BSD licensed implementation of Sun's basic security module, the API and file format. And it's the user space side of the CAPP audit implementation in FreeBSD in macOS 10. And that one got updated with a new dtrace audit provider using this functionality. And the OpenBSM GitHub repository got support for covariety static analysis was added to Travis CI. So they switched from, what was it previously? So they switched to GitHub, but they had their previous sources on. It wasn't a Subversion. What was it? Isn't it in a report here somewhere? I can't find it right now. But anyway, they're
Perforce
in
or
GitHub
something,
now.
maybe. Anyway.
Yeah, Perforce. Yeah, people who are interested in that one could check that out. They also have updated their homepage a little bit, and you can find all the latest sources in the link as well, with or linked from the report. And another
glossing
report.
over some other stuff. Cloud ABI, which we've talked about before, has its status update, including they've ported a number of libraries like Boost and LevelDB. But one of the projects going on right now is the reference implementation of the Bitcoin client being ported to use Cloud ABI. The idea here is that the networking and consensus code, if that somehow got compromised, it wouldn't allow an attacker to steal the Bitcoins from your local wallet by sandboxing those bits.
Which has happened before, yeah.
So interesting stuff happening there. Then a number of projects having to do with especially the SoC devices like Raspberry Pis and so on. Marius Strobel has added enhanced support for eMMC, including being able to partition the eMMCs, which is something that's starting to happen more now with Intel NUCs and things like that, but also faster SD card modes. So both the eMMC and the SSD cards can now support DDR52 mode, which basically increases the speed from about 40 to 45 megabytes a second to 80 megabytes a second.
Ooh, nice.
Which will make a big difference when reading from SD cards.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Great. But you need those special controllers for that one?
Yeah, but basically most devices have those controllers now, but we're using the older driver and weren't taking advantage of that extra speed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so people can look out for that one and check it out on their devices and see whether it got them a little bit of a speed boost.
There's also an update about Trusted BSD, which is a bigger overall project that pulls in things like that BSM thing we talked about a minute ago, event auditing, OpenPAM, UFS, ACLs, and all the other various work that was done to make FreeBSD meet the requirements to be used by governments and so on.
Mm-hmm. And they also moved... they're the ones who moved from the source repository to GitHub. That's the one. I mixed those two up. Yeah.
Oh, the OpenBSM one did as well. It was longer ago.
Yeah.
There's an update from Intel about the drivers for their 10 and 40 gig network cards and the work that's going on there. Update on the Linuxulator and actually implementing not implemented system calls separately from the ones that are just not ported to FreeBSD yet, and actually distinguishing those two, and adding two new system calls, preadv and prewritev. Other work also on the MMC stack to make it work via CAM, which will provide it more generic interface, and should be pretty interesting. Then there was the PNFS server stuff. We talked about it a little bit when the call for testing came out, but we didn't really understand what the Plan B part meant. And it actually explained here. It says, Rick says, my first attempt at a PNFS server was using GlusterFS, but it was a dud. It worked, but the performance was so bad it wasn't usable. So in his Plan B, he did it all pure FreeBSD, and now it works great. He plans to eventually support mirroring, but doesn't currently plan to try to support striping.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you're interested in building something like Ceph, but NFS, then you should maybe look into this.
Yeah, and people can follow the FreeBSD-FS mailing list to get updates there and play around with that one.
Yep. There's also various updates on architectures. So if you care about special SoCs like the S390 or the Marvel Armada 380X or PowerPC books and so on, there's updates there. There's also updates on a number of ports like MySQL, Rust, and so on, where big things are happening in those projects. And then there's actually an interesting one here. SnowBV, the company, is sponsoring an update to the Dutch translation of the FreeBSD handbook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're using the new PO translation systems we had in a while, but they hadn't had the time yet to use it, and now they're using it quite heavily, actually, in the Dutch translation project to make the translations easier for future updates. And they're slowly but steadily converting the whole doc project in the Dutch language to the PO systems, and they're also thinking about trying it for the htdocs pages, which aren't yet in the PO system, but we could test that and see how it goes. So there's an update there, and the whole report is actually more detailed than we could cover in here. So people should check it out. We have the links in the show notes, and people can dig into individual reports and have much more links to follow in there. And the deadline for submissions covering the period from April to June 2017 is July 7th, 2017. So you should probably get the next status report in around July, August somehow. And of course, we'll cover it on the show when that one comes out as well. Okay, then next we have a plan for open source software maintainers from Colin Percival on Demonic Dispatches, his little blog here. Well, not so little actually. So what's this all about?
Right. So Collins describes a proposal for how we might solve some of the problems with open source. He says here, I've been writing open source software for about 15 years now, while I'm still wet behind the ears compared to FreeBSD grades like Kirk McKusick and Paul Hennenkamp. I've been around long enough to start noticing patterns in particular. Free software is expensive. Software is expensive to begin with, but good quality open source software tends to be written by people who are recognized as experts in their fields, possibly partly because of that particular software. And so, they fetch a higher price. This influences their time, or what their time is used for. Individual developers like doing things that are fun and, high status.
Right. On the other hand, the companies usually pay developers to work specifically on the features those companies need. And maintaining those, or the existing code is important, but it's neither fun nor high status. And it tends to get underweighted by companies as well, since maintainers are inherently, or maintenance in general, is inherently unlikely to be the most urgent issue at any given time. Which I can relate to. Yeah, this has happened to me before, and to other people as well. So that's why Colin lists it here.
Yeah, so this is one of the problems that open source software is largely a throw code over the fence and walk away exercise, especially for companies. Over the past 15 years, Colin's written FreeBSD Update, BSDiff, PortSnap, Scrypt, spiped, and Kivalu, and done a lot of work on the FreeBSD EC2 platform. Of these, I know BSDiff and Scrypt are widely used, and I suspect that Kivalu is not. But beyond that, I have very little knowledge of how widely or where my work is actually being used. Anecdotally, it seems that the other developers are in similar positions. At conferences, I've heard variations of, "You're using my code? Wow, that's awesome. I had no idea," many times. He says, I have even less knowledge of what people are doing with my work or what problems or limitations they're running into. Occasionally I get bug reports or feature requests, but I know I only hear from a very small portion of the users of my work. I have a long list of feature ideas which are sitting in limbo because I don't know if anyone would ever use that feature. I suspect the answer is yes, but I'm not going to spend time implementing these until I have some confirmation of that.
Yeah, why spend the effort and the time if you don't know whether this feature is actually something that people want?
Yeah. And he says, a lot of mid-sized companies would like to be able to pay for support for the software they're using, but can't find anyone to provide it. For large companies, it's often easier. They just simply hire the author of the software, or many developers who are doing ongoing maintenance work on open source software were in fact hired for a lot of this in-house expertise. But while there's very little available for a company which needs a few minutes per month of expertise, in many cases the best support they can find is sending an email to the developer of the software that they're using and not paying anything at all. We've all received, "Can you help me figure out how to use this?" emails, and most of us are happy to help when we have time, but relying on developers' generosity is not a good long-term solution.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, he says, every few months I get emails from people asking if there's any way they can support my open source software contributions. Usually I encourage them to just donate to the FreeBSD Foundation. Conversely, there are developers who work whose work I would like to support, like people working on FreeBSD Wi-Fi and video drivers, but there isn't any straightforward way to do this. Patreon has demonstrated that a lot of people are willing to pay to support what they see as worthwhile work, but if they don't get anything directly in exchange for that patronage.
Yeah, so he proposes a couple of solutions, or offers some, a way out, a possible way out for that?
Stating the facts here, he says users of open source software want to be able to get help when they, with their specific use case, how they use the open source software. Conversely, developers of open source software want to know how people are using that and which use cases are actually the most popular. Users of open source software want to support the work that they use, and developers of open source software want to know which projects people actually care about. And then users of open source software want specific improvements. Developers of open source software may be interested in making those specific changes, but don't want to spend the time unless they know someone will actually use it.
Right.
And then lastly, users of open source software have money. Developers of open source software get day jobs writing other code because nobody is willing to pay them to maintain the open source software. So when you take those facts and the two sides of each one, it seems obvious that we could come up with a solution for this. We just aren't sure how to make it work yet.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of model you use, and because people tried similar things in the past, and he's proposing something different, similar.
Yes. In particular, people have tried bug bounty type things for open source, but the problem with the bounty source type things is that you tend to get, let's write this feature as quickly and as dirtily as we can to get the $500 bounty or whatever, and then move on.
Yeah, there's not much maintenance afterwards.
What we really want is to provide this continuous income to support the maintenance of the software.
Which is sometimes
so he says,
more
I'd like
expensive.
to see this situation get fixed. As I envision it, a solution would look something like a cross between Patreon and Bugzilla. Users would be able to sign up to support projects of their choice with a number of dollars per month, possibly arbitrary amounts, possibly specific tiers or whatever, maybe even just $0 a month, but indicating moral support or whatever. And then they'd also be able to open issues. They could be private, technical support requests, or public, like bugs and feature requests. Users would be able to indicate their interest in public issues created by other users, stars or whatever. Developers would get to see the open issues along with the nominal value contributed to them, although not specific dollar amounts necessarily. So I think maybe it's something like I've seen at one of my hosting, actually DigitalOcean has a thing where when you have an account, you get like 5 votes, and you get to vote for which features you would like to see them implement. And then the ones that make it to the top of the list are the ones they work on. If you did a Patreon thing where, you get a star every month that you support this software, and you can then put that star towards, you can keep putting it towards your favorite feature until it makes it to the top, or you can spread them around or whatever you want to do. It might provide some way to do it. In particular, though, if we set this up kind of like support contracts, I think we can get companies to pay for them as well. It says users would be able to indicate their interest in public issues. Developers would get to see open issues along with the nominal value computed based on, the stars times the sizes of the support contracts or whatever, and use that to decide which issues need to be worked on first.
Makes sense. So he poses 3 questions for the readers. The first one is, if this existed, would you, an open source software developer, sign up and use it? The second is, if this existed, would you, a user of open source software, be likely to pay to support and receive support from an open source software developer? And third question is, does anyone want to build this? And there's a little FAQ at the bottom as well. So the comment section got pretty active after that was posted. There's also a Reddit thread about that. We put both in the show notes so people can read about what people have proposed and what kind of other solutions they tried. So this is interesting. Yeah, I think we should watch this a little bit and see what comes out of this.
Yeah.
'Cause
So in particular, Colin says if people want this, he's enthusiastic about the idea. Although he's busy running Tarsnap, so he can't actually build it. So he would like to work with somebody else maybe to get that done.
yeah, so get in touch with Colin Percival. He has his contact information on the blog. Well, you should be able to find Colin Percival. If not through us, if we are intermediaries, that's also fine for us.
And I noticed the first comment on the blog currently is from Paul Hennenkamp, who's done something like this before. He's written an article for ACMQ magazine about it, but he's also done it himself, where he does the varnish moral license and so on.
Yeah, that's a good blog post. I've read it a couple of years ago. Was it years ago? Oh, it's been a while, but it's still good and valid, and that's how he got some of the stuff done for Varnish. Yeah, and there's some follow-up things in the comments, so it's well worth checking out.
Yep. Speaking of checking things out, you should check out IX Systems.
Yeah, all the time, because there's something new every week. Not only because they have a nice company blog of all the systems or all the conferences that they're going to and present their storage systems and their server solutions, but also the things that they offer, because you can go to ixsystems.com/bsdnow and you get a server buying guide for open source, which became much more important this week with all the, locked computers that were out there, and they tell you a way, if you have a snapshotted system, then you have not the problem of coming up in the morning and finding your computer being locked. So that's one solution if you are putting your storage solution on IX Systems, which relies on ZFS and the cool technologies that provide.
Yeah. So on their blog, there's an article here about Linux Fest Northwest. It's like, I was just there.
Yeah.
And they're actually a rundown of what happened at the conference. You can see this was the FreeNAS, FreeBSD, TrueOS Lumina booth. And we have a FreeNAS Mini running with the software. There's a laptop here running TrueOS and Lumina with the new FreeNAS 11 GUI running in the web browser. And then we have the FreeBSD journal, some of the different flyers for FreeBSD, the Teach BSD flyers, some IX flyers, and so on. And you can see how busy things were. We were answering questions. There's Rod and I setting up the FreeNAS Mini.
And yeah, I watched the talk that you gave, the 3 generations of FreeNAS, the world's most popular storage OS since Turn 12. That's a very good talk because also the questions got into the audio stream, so that was recorded as well. So it's a good talk about how FreeNAS evolved and how the whole system came to the state that it's currently in. So yeah, check that out, and yeah, check out IX Systems solutions and the servers they provide, starting from the FreeNAS Mini to the TrueNAS all-flash and hybrid arrays.
Yes, they have all those different things. And I look forward to the newest 4 servers I bought should ship Thursday or Friday this week.
Ooh, so we get some new systems to watch, like some, some photos and interiors.
Not for these. These are all going,
they're going
nowhere near my house. So
okay.
I won't
ever see them. To a server room somewhere in the world.
It's even more important in this particular case because the servers are going to data centers I've never been to, and I will never, in the entire life of the server, actually see it, that IX got everything right for me before they shipped it, right? So that it just arrives there, the network operator guys just plug in the power and the Ethernet and rack it, and it has to just work. And IX is the only company I trust to actually set the server up the way I need and ship it in such a way that there won't be any problems.
Starting from the small things like labeling cables and, doing the burn-in test before.
Literally, like indicating which of the many Ethernet ports to plug the internet into. Yeah.
It can be important, yeah. Very much.
Okay, so our next story is about OpenBSD. We have a user who's previously looked at VMM when it was part of OpenBSD 6.0 current, but now that it's been released as part of 6.1, they have a more in-depth rundown. They say this is going to be a likely long-running, infrequently updated series of posts as they poke around using VMM. And it has a link to the older post if you want to go back to see what's changed since October 2016. He says, as good as the OpenBSD documentation is, and VMM and VMD and VMCTL are no exception, I had to do a lot of fumbling around and asking on the MIST mailing list to actually get to this point, so he thought he'd write it down for the next person to be able to Google for. So it assumes that you're going to be using OpenBSD 6.1, that you have an AMD 64-based version of OpenBSD. Your system has an Intel CPU with a microarchitecture of at least Nehalem or better. So, Westmere, Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, basically. Anything that says i5 or i7, basically. And that you've configured your user to be able to use doas to run stuff as root. In the tutorial, they took a handy convention of anything written in blue is text in a config file, and anything written in green is a command that you should run.
Okay, so people can follow that directly and see, do the same configuration. Yeah, it seems straightforward, bringing the system up and running, with the PFCTL configuration.
Yeah, so they describe how to set up DHCP and so on the virtual Ethernet interface so that the virtual machine will get an IP address. Then they describe how to bridge it to the network and how to set up your PF rules to actually pass the traffic around, dealing with DNS and so on, how to get all that going. Then they do the initial creation of the VM by creating an image and making it such a size and so on, doing the initial run where you actually install the OS, and then configuring the config file. Here they have test.vm and showing how to set it and how to lock down the MAC address so it's a specific one and so on. Doing all that, and then creating a DHCP reservation so that the VM always gets the same IP address, which is really handy. Get that all going, and then have the VM start at boot or not if you want. And it's all set here. And they even got it configured so that a non-root user can start and stop that VM only.
Oh, nice.
And then they show how to use punching holes through NAT so that you can SSH into the VM directly on a different port from the internet.
Okay, that sounds pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
Considering the whole OpenBSD security focus and the things you want to have in VMM, as what you want to have some, you want the networking done right, but you also want to have the security and some of the usability as well in there. So this sounds like a nice mixture of all of these. Yeah, people should check that out and follow it, especially when...
Yes, as more people start using VMM, we'd like to hear more about it and how it's working for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be a nice thing to hear. Maybe they did some benchmarking or they're running some services on that are in production somehow, somewhere. Would be nice to hear about that.
And cut.
Audio still good?
As far as I know. I'm stumbling all over myself because I hear myself, but...
Yeah.
Michael's definitely not going to be available today. He's going
no
to
chance.
The doctor, I think.
Yeah, tomorrow I think he posted something, or that he's going to tomorrow with live streaming and all that. Yeah, that's fine. We'll do it another day.
Yep.
No rush. He's the centerpiece anyway, so we center around him.
He's easy to get.
And if we don't get him before BSDCan, then that's also fine.
Yeah, it's just ideally we use BSDCan to get the people that are hard to get over Skype.
Mm. and don't want
You know.
are a little bit reluctant to get interviewed in the first place.
Yeah. And so we locked them in a tiny glass room, and
The tape.
okay. Ready to do OpenBSD?
OpenBSD? Isn't
Changes
it
of
the...
note?
Oh, right, I jumped over that one. Let me open that. Because I would have continued with the next one already, but yeah, doing the...
You can't just skip over
Changes of-
OpenBSD. I get in
No,
trouble for
no. That wasn't my intention. I was just, at the bottom of the interview, but I somehow switched over the next one.
Sure you did.
Yeah,
I'll tell all the
yeah.
OpenBSD people you tried to
They
just
will
skip
hate
over
me
their
now,
stories.
more than they already do. Oh, so many beers at BSD can. Yeah, okay. Changes of note.
Ready?
Mhm.
And recording.
Next up are some OpenBSD changes of note. 621. This is probably just numbers.
They adopted
picked out of the hat.
Firefox versioning.
Yeah. So the first item here, or the first mention, is more stuff, more fun, which is always good. So this one is on Ted Unex's blog, and he pretty much lists in short form what kind of changes got into the system by now. So a couple of them are listed in our show notes, and we mentioned just the important ones, or, well, they're all important at some point, but the things we find useful to mention. So there's a thing to fix a script to not perform TTY operations on things that aren't TTYs, detected by Pledge. So Pledge already has found a bug
So
here.
this is the script command, which you can use to record the output of commands.
Which is useful if you want to see what you did a couple of weeks ago in the terminal session. And
Well, it's also useful to record all the text from like a build world and things of that nature.
Yeah, to see if there are any errors in between that scrolled off.
That's how I learned about script, was the FreeBSD handbook back in FreeBSD 4 days.
Yeah, it's in there. There's a section in there. They also have a new str implementation, str, from MUSL. Is that the username, or is that a system?
Yeah, so Musel is a different libc.
Oh, I see.
I know FreeBSD has borrowed some stuff from it as well. And actually, I think one of the Google Summer of Code projects that Ed Mass proposed was being able to adjust things in FreeBSD so that you could swap out FreeBSD's libc with the Musel libc, and everything would still work.
Oh, I see. Oh, so
But yeah,
they did
so the
they-
implementation in Musel is faster, which is stir is find a string in a string.
yeah, substring or something. Yeah. Well, I remember that from my PHP days, long gone. Moving on. So that one is using the much faster two-way matching algorithm, and they are using that now apparently. And they also have a change that provides TCB, thread control block in short, macros from MIPS64. Now every Arch has them, which is good. So there's a uniform change here. And they added a NAT T keep alive timer to IKD.
Yep, that's for IPsec.
Mhm.
They merged the newer libdrm. After a forced unmount, also unmount any file systems below the mount point so that you can, anything mounted underneath is also removed. They say flip previously warm pages in the buffer cache to memory above the DMA region if UVM tells us it is available. Pages are not automatically promoted to upper memory. Instead, it uses an additional memory only for when the cache considers long-term buffers. I/O still requires DMA memory, so writing to a buffer will pull it back down. They've also updated a lot of their makefiles, support for systems for both GCC and Clang, so that i386 and AMD64 can actually be built with Clang now. taking a more radical approach of disabling colors in Clang. Apparently, they didn't quite get them all off, which is quite
Just in
interesting
case.
because the thread on the FreeBSD list right now is about getting colors turned back on when using like -J32 and compiling with lots of threads.
Yeah, and you don't see which messages belong to which, and the colors might help you a little bit.
Well, it's more that making the error messages stand out from the other messages.
Making them more visibly appealing.
When
That's
data
an appeal.
buffered for write to a tmux exceeds the limit, discard it and redraw the screen. Helps when a fast process is running inside tmux, running inside a slow terminal. They added a port of the witness lock validation tool from FreeBSD. Oh, I did. That's big news. Porting witness over from FreeBSD. So what this does is it keeps track of the order that locks are taken in, and then will produce a warning message if the lock is ever taken in a different order. This detects what are called lock order reversals. The idea is that if you lock the first lock and then the second lock, while someone else tries to lock the second lock and then the first lock, you could get lock 1 while they get lock 2, and then they're trying to get lock 1 while still holding 2, and you're trying to get lock 2 while holding 1, so neither of you can ever get the lock.
Yeah, that's a deadlock
and so you've created a
situation.
deadlock, and the system will just hang forever. Whereas if you both try to get lock 1, one of you will get it, and one of you will be like, sorry, it's already in use. And then the second guy will be able to get lock 2, finish his work, release the locks, and then the first person can do lock 1 and 2. Whereas if you have this reversal, you can basically end up in a deadlock.
Yeah, and that one prevents, or at least watches those and
Even the Illumos people were interested in having something like that. Well, actually, it was ZFS wanted to have a version of Witness just for ZFS that would be portable across all the operating systems. They definitely found that FreeBSD had a good solution for that there.
yeah, there's a good amount of locking in the ZFS file system, I can imagine. So yeah, they might want to check that out as well.
Yeah, they've removed KGDB because their version neither compiled nor worked anymore. I know on FreeBSD we've switched to putting that in ports because it needs a newer version of GDB that is GPL v3. Interestingly, they also added a constant time implementation of AES that they borrowed from Bear SSL. That one's interesting. And obviously, because they imported the newer OpenSSH, or rather, the newer OpenSSH was exported from OpenBSD. But anyway, with SSH v1 removed, that's a big change. And then there's lots of other interesting stuff in here if you want to go read about it.
Yeah, that would be interesting for some of the stuff we couldn't mention here. It's all listed in Ted's report. And the next one that we have this week is digging into BSD's choice of Unix group for new directories and files. So this one is from University of Toronto.
Yes, this is Chris something. We've covered his Chris Seiberman.
Siebenmann. That's a German name, actually.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, he's
Moving on.
written quite a few different articles that we've talked about over the years. So he was having an interesting problem the other week with chmod. So he created a new directory in /tmp, and then when he tried to chmod it, he couldn't add group permissions to it, because it turned out the directory he created under /tmp had a group that he didn't belong to, because on FreeBSD, the way it works is when you create a directory or a file in a directory, it inherits the group from the directory that it's in.
Right.
Whereas
the top level one.
on other systems, what it has done is inherit the primary group of the user who creates it, or the primary group of the user who's running the process that creates it. And this caused him a little bit of confusion. And then he thought this behavior was something specific that FreeBSD had done. But when tracing back the history, it goes back much, much farther than that.
Yeah, I can remember there's isn't there a section also in the FreeBSD handbook about that behavior?
He actually covers when the text about it appeared in the man page.
Right. Okay.
And other stuff. And then what's interesting is there's support in some file systems for setting a specific bit to make this do something different instead.
And which is?
But it's not compiled in by default, and I had wondered about considering fixing that or not. But since it's not in by default and nobody's been using it, I don't know that there's that much demand for it. Anyway, so he says he pointed out that FreeBSD's behavior of creating everything inside a directory with a group of that directory is actually traditional BSD behavior and dates all the way back to the 1980s, not some odd new invention by FreeBSD. As traditional behavior, it makes sense that it's explicitly allowed by the standards, but I've come to think that makes sense in context and in general. To see this, we'll need some background about, how this became the default behavior. So in the beginning, two things were true in Unix. First, there was no mkdir system call. The process could only, and a process could only belong to one group at a time. With processes being in only one group, the choice of group for a newly created file system object was easy. It was the group of the process. This was felt to be sufficiently obvious behavior in V7 Unix that the create man page didn't even mention that that's what happened.
Because back then everyone was, used to that being only one group.
What group would be assigned to a file other than the group of the process?
Yeah, that's totally normal back then.
Yeah. So he actually points out where in the code that is. If you go and look in the Unix history repo and pull up V7 Unix. He says, now things get interesting. In 4.1c BSD, this is where the mkdir system call was introduced and where the create system call went away and was replaced as an option to the open system call. So you open a file and set a flag. If the file doesn't exist, it gets created instead of having to do a separate system call to create the file. This is where processes can also now have multiple groups. The 4.1c BSD open man page is silent about the group of newly created files, while the mkdir man page specifically claims that new directories will have their effective group, i.e. the V7 behavior. So whatever group the process is actually running as is what it'll get. That's actually wrong. In both mkdir and the sysdirectory.c file, the make node in the UFS syscall file, the group of the newly created object is set to the group of the parent directory. Then when 4.2 BSD came out, the man page was updated and the group of the new directory is correctly documented. And it continues to say, but the open man page continues to say nothing on the topic. So BSD's traditional behavior was introduced at the same time that processes got the ability to be in multiple groups. So when a process can only be in a single group, like in the V7 case, it makes sense to create newly created file system objects with that group. It's basically the same as making new file system objects as being owned by you when you create them. When your process can be in multiple groups, though, things get less clear. A file system object can only be in one group, so which of your several groups should newly created file system objects be owned by? And how can you conveniently change which is your primary group? One option is to have some notion of a primary group and then provide a way to shuffle around and then show about seeding into different directories and having to remember to do like default group blah every time to change which group to work in. You want one setting when you're in your home directory and a different setting when you're working in a collaborative directory with other people and a bunch of things like that. So the other option is the BSD choice, inheriting the group from context. By far the most common case is that when you want to create new files and directories to be created in the context, i.e. the group, of the surrounding directory. So if you're in your home directory, it's going to be owned by your private group, and when you create files, that's what you want it to do. If you're working in a collaborative area, this is the group that'll own the directory, and so your newly created files should also be owned by that group. Arguably, it's a feature that you don't even have to be in the group to create new files. So in the case of /tmp, which is owned, the group is the wheel group. If you're a regular user, you're not in the wheel group, but the newly created files can still be owned by that group you just won't be able to change the group permissions on them because you don't have access to that group. Since you can chgroup directories that you own, it's easy for you to change the permissions on that directory in TMP to belong to you so that you can have access. But yeah. So if you embrace the idea of Unix processes being in multiple groups, not just having one primary group and then some number of secondary groups, then the BSD choice makes a lot of sense. And for all of its faults, BSD tends to be relatively fully embrace its change, not totally, perhaps, because of backwards compatibility issues and whatever. So while it leads to some odd issues, such as the one that Chris ran into, pretty much any choice here is going to have some oddities. If it's also probably the more usable choice in general if you expect much collaboration between people and different groups. Partly because it mostly doesn't require people to remember to do anything, it just works.
Yeah, without thinking too much about it.
Mm-hmm. The interesting one is they ran into a problem with this, but also they found that, I think it was Go ran into a problem with it. Yeah.
Is it?
So Go created a directory under /tmp during the build process, and didn't have permission to be able to chmod it to not give the group certain access, and because of that, the build would fail.
Oh, that's an interesting problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And he also has a little PS here saying, arguably, group 0 should not be group wheel, but instead something else that only root is a member of, and wheel should be some completely separate group. To have group wheel used for group ownership as well as SU access to root is a little confusing.
Yeah, that's true. That might trip something.
Yes, and he said the other thing that can trip people up is sysadmins, even when they're running as a regular user, not the root, because they're in the wheel group, they won't notice this problem in /tmp. Because they're in the wheel group, so they'll be able to chmod it. So if a user reports a problem with permissions in /tmp and you try it as your regular unprivileged user, it'll work for you and you'll be very confused.
Yeah, yeah. It's always if you prepare something for people who have, or users that have less privileges or are not in the wheel group, then you say, oh, I tested it, it works, and they try it out. Oh, it didn't work. Didn't you test it? I did. It worked for me. And that's something that could be bit of a discussion where the problem actually is.
Yeah. I remember when I worked at the power plant, we had a user account that had like absolutely no privileges, no programs. Just it was a completely dumb user that we all used for testing things because our regular accounts had too many permissions.
Yeah, so this is one of the problem areas that you could trip over.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a nice write-up of that problem.
And mostly in the original post, he was upset at FreeBSD's behavior. But in the follow-up post, after thinking about it a bit, he's decided that FreeBSD is actually doing the smart thing.
It's good to try it out and see what happens, and then think about why this is the way it is, and not just think that it's done out of malicious intent or something. It has a purpose, and sometimes that purpose is historically involved, but also has roots in newer, or can trip you over in newer systems that still have this behavior.
Yep. So this week's episode is brought to you by DigitalOcean. If you go over to DigitalOcean.com, you can check out and you can spin up a FreeBSD or some other operating system droplet in under 55 seconds.
Yeah, very quickly, and you get it up and running, and it has all SSD storage behind it, which makes it blazingly fast for whatever project you are doing in the cloud. And you can get a bunch of cool stuff like compute stuff, and you also get a couple of options for bigger storage options. How much terabyte you could connect to one of those?
You can get up to 16 terabytes in block storage per instance of the block storage. So you can have multiple of them, but the biggest one you can individually create is 16 terabytes. But, I understand why that is, because the backing stores, they want to be able to, when you want two separate ones that are 16 terabytes, they'll put them on different backing
Yeah, just in
disks.
case. Yeah, but it's a lot of storage that you can
Yeah.
get for your virtual
Well,
thing out
the other
there.
interesting thing is they've started changing the options for the droplets. So you have the regular ones where you have $5, $10, $20 and so on. And every time the price doubles, the amount of resources you get doubles, right? Twice as much RAM, more cores, more disk space, more bandwidth as you keep
Hmm.
going up. But sometimes when you get up to the bigger ones, it's like, well, I need 16 gigs of RAM, but I don't really need that much CPU power. So they now have the high memory instances where you can get, 16 gigs of RAM for less money. And they're just starting to introduce high CPU instances where you can get lots of
Ah.
CPU power without having to buy too much RAM.
Yeah, for the more compute-intensive works
Hmm.
that you might have.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and you
this is
can
a
get
nice
all
option.
3 sets of these on an hourly basis.
Hmm. And you can also check out which data center that should be in, because they have on the networking tab in the product section, if you scroll way to the bottom, there's a little world map where you can see their data centers, and you can also click on one of these and do a little speed test to see which one is closest to you and figure out this one is the data center to be in.
Yep, they also have the load balancing feature, the floating IP feature, which allows you to move traffic back and forth between different VMs to keep it up even when you're taking VMs down, and the load balancer can do smart things. But yes, they have San Francisco, Toronto, New York, London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Bangalore, and Singapore. That's pretty good selection.
Everywhere in the world, mostly, yeah. The big
Yep.
parts are covered, I guess. Yeah, so check out DigitalOcean and what they have to offer.
Oh, and when you sign up, use the coupon code FreeBSD now and get $10 credit.
Yeah, don't forget that. For your first instance, it's a good test to use that coupon code.
Yep. So our next story is about centrally managing Beehive infrastructure using Ansible, libvirt, and package SSH.
That sounds very promising. So this is a blog post basically going over this setup or how you would run this or why you would run this in the first place. Um, do you know from whom this is? It's on shellguardians.com.
Xavier Garcia, it says here in the about me.
Okay. I didn't get that. So he writes, at work, we've been using Beehive for a while to run non-critical systems. It is a really nice and stable hypervisor, even though we're using an earlier version available on FreeBSD 10.3. This means we lack Windows and VNC support, among other things, which is not a big deal. Which reminds me I have to try that at work. After some iterations in our internal tools, we realized that the installation process was too slow and we always repeated the same steps all the time. Of course, any good sysadmin will scream, automation! And so we did. Therefore, we started looking for different ways. Was that too loud? We started for different ways to improve our deployments. We had a look at existing frameworks that manage Beehive, but none of them had features that we find really important. Having a centralized repository of VM images. For instance, SmartOS applies this method successfully by having a backend server that stores a catalog of VMs in zones, meaning that new instances can be deployed in a minute at most. This is a game changer if you're really busy in your day-to-day operations. That continues on with, since we are not great programmers, we decided to leverage the existing tools to achieve the same results. That is, having a centralized repository of Beehive images in our data centers. And the following building blocks are used. So, of course, ZFS snapshots of an existing virtual machine. This is going to be our VM template. And a modified version of one-off package create to create a ZFS snapshot. Any links to the GitHub page for that software. Package SSH and package repo to host a local FreeBSD repo in a FreeBSD jail, libvirt to manage our Beehive VMs, and the Ansible modules virt, virt_net, and virt_pool. And the workflow basically is we write a YAML direct dictionary to define the parameters needed to create a new VM. That's going to be used later on in the Ansible, I guess. The VM template, name of the package that will be installed in /beehive/images.
Yeah, what's interesting is they're actually using the package tool for the templates. So they create the templates and they can install them from a package repository as if they were ports, basically. And so they can add and remove and upgrade templates as if they were packages. That's really cool.
That also has the VM name, the CPU, the memory, the domain template, serial console, so most of the things that you might need in your little VM. This dictionary will then be kept in the corresponding host_vars definition, that's Ansible specific, that configures our Beehive host server, and then basically describes the Ansible playbook. That one does installing the packages, or the package named after the VM template, which is the ZFS snapshot. For example, package install FreeBSD 10.3 release ZFS 20 gigs on a specific date, and then uses cat and ZFS receive to load the ZFS snapshot in a new volume, and calls the
Useless
libvirt
use
module.
of cat.
Yeah, right, cat pipe, yeah, things like that. But that can be or a little bit optimized. Calls the libvirt module to automatically configure and boot the VM. And then the sysadmin can log into the new VM and adjust the host name and network settings. And they also run a separate Ansible playbook to configure the new VM as usual. And once automated, installation process needs 2 minutes, only 2 minutes at most, compared with the 30 minutes needed to manually install VM Plus, allowing us to deploy many guests in parallel. Yeah, that's a big plus if you can do many of these things in an automated fashion and parallel over many systems. And he provides the resources, basically the sample configs and the Beehive driver, the virsh example for libvirt, and migrating the VMs without the shared storage. I might look into that a little bit deeper because some of these things are interesting to me as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
well,
nice.
the overall article is interesting. I think the idea of treating ZFS send streams in files as packages for templates is a really interesting idea.
Yeah, this needs a little bit. This is warranting a little bit exploring, because I can think of many scenarios where you could use, and of course you could swap out Ansible with other automation solutions like Puppet and Chef and SaltStack.
Well, for me, it's a different idea that sparked in my head. I've been looking at ways to do use ZFS receive to update remote systems. Like not VMs, the actual host system. And now I have this idea of a package that is a boot environment. You install this package and it creates the boot environment with the content in it.
I see. Yeah. This is going somewhere. Yeah. This is something we should discuss at BSDCan with a couple of folks, because they might have more ideas or insights.
A slightly different version of packaged base that's a package you install that just installs a boot environment.
Yeah, unpacks it there, and you have it directly after the send.
Well, basically, it would be one blob file, and the script would just pipe it into ZFS receive.
And then you're done, basically. And it's also verified and validated.
Yeah.
That's the same
it's got
version.
a checksum, it's signed.
Yeah.
And it can possibly even run the badmin command to make that the next thing you boot, although I don't think I would do that. But
it's a little risky, but doing it on a test system is something I would try out.
What I'd like to get to is being able to just roll out a new package of the base OS and have all my servers updated. And package base isn't quite there, and I have enough other things going on that doing it as one image instead of all the separate packages is kind of useful for me.
You got our gears working. It's something we could leverage. Yeah, and I definitely will look at the resources a little bit more and see what kind of scripts there are.
Yes, the various articles I found while trying to build this are also a treasure trove of interesting bits.
Yeah, so people should check that out. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to do something about hearing myself. I can't talk for shit when I can hear myself.
Yeah, fix that and then we'll go on.
Oh, we have 6 feedbacks this week, eh?
Yeah. But I think we're good on time to do these.
Ooh, that last one looks like it might be interesting.
Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit longer, I guess.
Okay.
Oh, I'm getting
Remember,
feedback
we'll
from...
do Tarsnap before the feedback.
Yeah,
So
right after the Beastie Bits.
after the Beastie Bits before the feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Wanna open a couple of links? Just in case. Didn't we have that one from Charmbug already? Tor Browser Bundle Hackathon?
Yes, we talked about it the other week, but the date's been changed.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's why. Yeah, we try not to recycle old news.
Oh, I wonder what the feedback on that one will be.
Which one?
Making Capsicum mandatory in all versions of FreeBSD.
Ooh. Yeah, that would be interesting to see what people have against that, if anything. Well, we'll see.
Okay. Stop looking at that IRC.
So tempting.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
And recording.
Next up, we have a story about NetBSD maintainer in the QEMU project. And this is from the NetBSD blog. And QEMU...
Nope. Sorry. Nope.
Isn't
You
it?
skipped something or something.
Again? Oh,
I
oops.
think so.
Did I? We stopped at the automation part in the centrally managed...
Sorry, did we cut too soon then?
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
You
we
wanted
did.
to fix the
Oops.
audio.
No. The audio was fine. Sorry. I skipped the NetBSD story. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
I'm the man of second takes.
Yes. So I thought you skipped the OpenBSD community. So it seems that the problem is I didn't have a tab open for this NetBSD story, and so it got skipped.
Ah, that's why. Okay. Yeah, I try not to open too many tabs.
Yeah, I have a tab for everything open now, but it's because I thought
We did that already. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
No, that's fine.
basically, I somehow missed this one story. I had opened the centrally managed Beehive story, and then the next tab was a blank one, and then the OpenBSD community goes gold story. And so, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll redo this. It's quick enough, and then we can
Yeah,
continue.
it's a short enough story that we can just bluff our way through. Anyway.
Like we always do. Yeah.
Okay. And recording.
The next story we have is NetBSD maintainer in the QEMU project from the NetBSD blog. And this talks about QEMU, the fast processor emulator, is a generic open source machine emulator and virtualizer. It defines state-of-the-art in modern virtualization. And it goes on, this software has been developed in multi-platform environments with support for NetBSD since virtually forever. It's the primary tool used by the NetBSD developers and release engineering team. It is run with continuous integration tests for daily commits and execute regression tests. Skip the line here. And through the automatic testing framework ATF, which the FreeBSD project also imported. And the QEMU developers warned the open source community with version 2.9 of the emulator that they will eventually drop support for suboptimally supported hosts if nobody will step in and take the maintainership to refresh the support. This warning was directed to major BSDs, Solaris, AIX, and Haiku. And thankfully, the NetBSD position has been filled, making NetBSD to restore official maintenance. So someone stepped up and got fixes in, or made that still important enough so that they will provide support for that. And they also provide a little roadmap in the article, which you can read up from our show notes. So yeah, nice work here, and keeping the QEMU project with NetBSD support running, because they need it apparently pretty heavily in their release engineering and other testing efforts. So people need to support that as well. So it's good that someone stepped up to get that continued support. Nice. Okay, then it's time for our little BSD Bits section, which has a couple of items this week. The first one is OpenBSD Community Goes Gold. So what's this all about?
So for 2017 so far, the individual donations, people just setting up a PayPal subscription to send $5 or $10 or $20 a month, have now added up to be the OpenBSD Foundation's first gold level sponsor of the year.
Oh, great.
Of course, last year, the total from small donors was an Iridium level donor. So we have to get more people to sign up.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, quickly, these monthly PayPal commitments by the community are our most reliable source of funds and thus the most useful for financial planning purposes. And they are extremely thankful to the continuing support and hope the community matches their 2016 achievement of Iridium status. Yeah, so there's the link to the OpenBSD Foundation's donation page, and sign up now for a small monthly donation if you're interested in OpenBSD development work, and to continue and fund like hackathons and things like that. That is something
I've had my subscription for almost since we started the show.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I need to look up the donation options they have, because the very first time that they started, I think I wanted to donate, but it didn't work for some reason from Germany, and I need to try it out again. Yeah,
it'd be like a conflict of interest for you anyway, wouldn't it?
Not that much. I don't see that.
I'm teasing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, if people are interested, donate money. It's going to a good cause. Okay, so next up, there's the Charmbox Tor Hackathon has been pushed back to June due to scheduling difficulties. So they have an updated meetup entry with the information, what they are doing. So that one we mentioned last time. So what they're doing is they try to bundle the Tor browser a little bit better into, is it the OpenBSD project, or is it in general BSD? Yeah, it's general BSDs. And yeah, if people are interested in that.
Yeah, so this is the Tor browser bundle is available on OpenBSD, and they want to make it work on FreeBSD.
Ah, right. Yeah, that's the cross-project pollination that we do sometimes in the ports tree. And yeah, if people are interested in that one, they can go to meetup.com and sign up to participate so people know that they will attend.
Yes. So the point, it's been pushed back to July, as it
Oh,
says
whoops.
right there on the screen.
I missed that. Okay. Yeah, we'll correct it in the show notes.
Yeah. But yes, it'll be July 27th now because scheduling is hard.
It is, yeah. It can be. Don't work at the university where you have to do scheduling. It's all very, very horrible.
Yeah.
Moving on.
This one's a really interesting one. This is a Google Summer of Code project over at Haiku OS, and their goal is to port the DRM driver for i915 by using the Dragonfly version. They're going to use Dragonfly's Linux compatibility layer, or Linux KPI, to be able to port the Linux kernel i915 driver to Haiku OS. But they're going to do it by using Dragonfly's Linux compatibility layer.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we need more DRM support in every OS that we can find. Because other than that, it's difficult to catch up with these newer, not just the eye candy, but also the graphics cards need to have that support. And the more support we can have in every OS, that's better. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And the next story is a tweet mentioning
Lars,
that
actually.
So mentioning that TomTom lists OpenBSD in the license statement that they have. So if you remember a couple of weeks ago, people found out that some parts in the Nintendo Switch has a FreeBSD license, and then people started looking at other devices that might have a similar license in their credits.
We saw in a previous episode we covered the in-dash computer in Jeep and a couple other manufacturers' cars. They're actually based on QNX, but QNX borrows a lot of code from OpenBSD and FreeBSD. And so you could scroll through the copyrights and see lots of names of people we know.
Yeah, it's nice. If you have such a device, then you can say, hey, here's my name on that device and in millions of others like that. And yeah, apparently they're using some OpenBSD code, or at least the headers from OpenBSD. And this is the thing that happens with the Switch. We found out that apparently some headers got used. It's not the whole operating system, but a couple of headers got used.
I think they use a bunch of pieces of the kernel in the Switch, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not enough that it's the whole operating system, but they still need to do the
Whereas the
licensing.
PlayStation 4 is literally FreeBSD 9.0 release, and then there's stuff on top of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so nice. Keep posting things that you find in license statements on various devices, big and small, and mention that and send it to us or tweet about it, and we'll pick it up in the next shows. Our next story.
An announcement from Sevenzanian that the May London BSD meetup will be at the Hand and Shear pub, 1 Middle Street, Cloth Fair, London.
Okay, so is this a monthly thing, or is it? Yeah, it's a monthly.
Yep, it's just going to be at a different venue than some of the previous ones.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it's just around the corner from the usual place, so no need to change your travel plans.
Yeah, easy to find. Okay, so if you're in the
that'll be
London
Monday
area,
the 22nd, starting at 6:30 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice to meet with BSD folks and talk over beer and other drinks. Doesn't have to be beer. Trust me, I know what I'm saying there. Yeah, talk to people and share your experiences, and maybe something will come out of that. Or if you just want to have a nice evening together with like-minded folks. And our last bits of news in that section is the Knoxbock meeting, May 30th, 2017, which has an introduction to FreeNAS by Sam Foreman. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep.
If you're not familiar with FreeNAS, that says this is a talk you won't want to miss. You get an overview of this FreeBSD-based storage appliance's capabilities, including examples of how it's used in various settings. And they provided the location where you can find that meetup.
Yep, it'll be at the Blount County Public Library as usual, so hope to see people there.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
If you're just a regular person that goes to that, do write in and tell us how it goes.
Yeah, it would be nice to hear something about these meetings, how they go,
Yeah,
and
especially,
what people
if
talk
it's
about there.
maybe not your first, but, if you're relatively new, we'd love to hear what you thought of it.
Yeah, how you liked it, and whether you already knew something about the stuff that they talked about and things like that.
Yes. So this week's episode is also brought to you by Tarsnap. You should go over to tarsnap.com, put in your $5, and start backing up your important files like now. You can
Safely
pause
and
the video
securely.
and we'll wait. And you
Yeah.
just go do that.
Yeah, it won't be long.
Yeah,
Why would
it
you
doesn't take
have to
very
do
long.
that?
The
Yeah,
package you install is very small. You generate a key, and then you back up some files, and you send them to the cloud, and you're done.
exactly. And you're the only person in the possession of the key, and no one else can grab it from the cloud or somewhere else because you're the only one who has the decryption key. And that's
Yeah,
the whole idea
some
of the
other
Tarsnap.
providers are like, well, we encrypt everything once with our key. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so you've encrypted all the files with the key you have, and my files and Benedict's files are both encrypted in the same way. So someone that gets that key, including like all your employees that have that key, can then look at all my files. How about not? Let's go with
Yeah,
Tarsnap,
and I'm
where
paying
I
money
have
for
the
that,
key,
yeah?
no one else has the key.
Not with Tarsnap. Tarsnap is totally different in that regard because it's
It's
using the
backups for the truly
AWS
paranoid.
cloud storage and uses that to not only scale the whole system, but also keeping it secure and scalable, the number of storage nodes that you might need for your needs. And as Alan already mentioned, there's a couple of packages available for the most popular Linux distributions, all the FreeBSDs, the NetBSDs, the OpenBSDs of this world, as well as macOS 10 and Windows subsystem for Linux. So there should be something for everyone. And of course, you can also get the source code, which is the platform-neutral version. If you want to compile it yourself, you can get that as well from tarsnap.com.
Cool.
Okay, this brings up right into our feedback and questions section for this week. And I'll start with the first one from David. He has a question about Linux on FreeBSD. He writes, "Hello, Alan, and hello, Benedict."
Didn't we answer this last week?
Did we? Oh, right. I remember the murder began thing.
We'll skip that one.
Okay.
Sorry.
That happens. We got excited.
Okay. Felix writes in about his home firewall. He says, I've enjoyed listening to BSD now and sometime, and I thought I'd ask your advice on a home firewall. I have a 100 megabit home network that needs a machine to act as a firewall. Electricity is expensive here, 42 cents per kilowatt hour. Jesus. So naturally, I thought of getting a Raspberry Pi 3. I've heard the NIC is limited to maybe 25 to 40 megabits due to being attached to the USB bus. Is this true? Yes. So I would suggest against the Raspberry Pi, in addition to the fact that it only has one. My other choice would be a Minnow board, which I've mentioned on the show, combined with a USB 3 NIC. There are some other types of devices that are a little better, especially ones that have real hardware network cards, and importantly, if they have two, makes it much better for a router.
Yeah, in that specific case, with the electricity bill not going through the roof, that was a better option in this regard. What about the Intel NUC? Would that be something?
There's only a couple of the models of NUCs that actually have
The two
network cards, and in general, the NUCs are kind of expensive because it's a whole computer and they're not that low power. Although they have like the Celeron or Pentium-based ones, which are cheaper. But you might want to look at something like Netgate sells I think it's the SG-1000, which is a little ARM 600 megahertz thing, but it's got two real network cards that are both gigabit, and it can actually forward a decent amount of traffic. And it's probably it's quite a bit better, definitely, than a Raspberry Pi or a Minnow board. And it won't involve any USB, which would be much better.
Yeah.
And it can forward at least 300 megabits of traffic through it. So that's probably a lot better in that regard. And the price is $149, which is and that includes a gold subscription to pfSense as well, so that you can just drop that on there.
Yeah, this might be a better solution to use.
Yep. There are other similar devices like that you could get as well, but I would look for something that actually has two real Ethernet adapters rather than having to use USB.
And you might find some decent, tutorials and how-tos for that specific hardware on the internet that describes a similar firewall setup that you have in mind. Yeah, if you have such a board and have it running at home, send us a follow-up and see how it goes. Maybe we cover it in our news sections. Okay, next one is Don about Golang and Rust.
You skipped something. So we have
Again?
David, who asks about Docker recipes for jails. Is there a jail manager
Oh, right.
or a collection of scripts emulating what Docker recipe does? With that, I mean, I would be nice to have a collection of scripts to set up the mostly immutable jail with firewall rules and all that only exports the data and config directory. For small applications, this maybe isn't interesting, but for software with dependencies, for example, Nextcloud, with both database and web server, it'd be nice if we could ship the better recommended settings as the developers know exactly what it has to work with. The nice thing about jails is that it's a separate namespace, basically, so you do have separate packages and you can have the dependencies and so on. The way TrueOS is moving towards for its jails, it's basically a script that installs Nextcloud and its dependencies and sets it up. So it might be a little closer to what you're looking for. In general, if you're concerned about security, what you don't want to do is download something somebody else built for you, like a whole jail. But a little script that just creates the jail and installs Nextcloud and its dependencies from the official FreeBSD repos would be useful. I'm not aware of any jail manager that has pre-built things like that, except for the TrueOS system. That's going to have these templates for FreeNAS and TrueOS machines. All of those tools from TrueOS are available in the regular FreeBSD ports tree, so you could look at that.
Yeah, directly.
So I guess that's the new ones in TrueOS are based on IOCage. So I guess IOCage is going to grow this capability, or if it hasn't already. So that might be the thing to look at.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with TrueOS and their IOCage system so far. So you might want to check that out and save some work about building, the whole jail yourself, which is a good learning experience. But sometimes if problems come up, then you don't know and you want to have a ready run jail manager, then you just say jail create and it does it all for you.
So Don writes in about Golang and Rust. He says, what is up with Golang on FreeBSD? Well, it's in the ports tree and people write Go apps. I've used Go apps on FreeBSD. They work nicely. Is it gaining a fan base? It's hard to say there. Does the garbage collection scare off system tool programmers? I don't know if it's that particularly. The main reason that Go isn't used in the base system for FreeBSD is that we don't have the Go compiler in the base system. If Clang were to grow the ability to compile Go code into the binaries, then we might see a lot more of that. I think the statically linked model and binary distribution is definitely something we're not super keen on. We like reproducible stuff that we can build from the source code as opposed to binaries. We offer binary distribution via the package system, but those packages are built from source code that someone could actually check, not just grabbing a binary from Google somewhere or some random person and then shipping it. That can happen, but it's not really the preferred way to do it. I definitely think there is concurrency and parallelism in system tools like the package managers and so on, and that Go might be able to help with that. It's just a matter of, do we have to pull in and maintain all of the Go toolchain stuff just to be able to do that? And if it's a fast-moving target, it makes it difficult because if we ship a certain version of the Go compiler in FreeBSD 12, we have to support that for 5 years and not change it. That's
a long time.
Rather difficult. Then he asked, does the BSD community feel about Rust? I've seen on IRC people actually built a kernel module in Rust and loaded it into the kernel because, once it's a binary, it's a binary.
Mm.
So it's entirely possible to do. But again, it's not in the base system because we don't have the Rust compiler in the base system. But if there were a good enough reason to, I suppose someone could do that.
Yeah, it's not totally out of the way, but sometimes it's also a matter of how much do you put in the base system and how much do you keep in ports. Because the more you put into the base system, you have to support as well, but also keep updated. And people who using it on an embedded system ask, hey, why do I get all these compilers I don't need? And that's always a discussion between whether you put more into the base system or rip more out and make it more dynamic so people can configure it the way they want.
Right. So for third-party applications, Go and Rust can just work now. But for things in the base system where you want to be able to compile it with what comes in the base system, it gets more complicated.
Do we have an extra mailing list or a chat room with that for that language?
I don't think it makes sense to have a language-specific one, like
FreeBSD Rust or FreeBSD Go.
I think if there's a Rust mailing list, it's a ports mailing list about Rust and all the Rust-related things.
Mm.
And it's more specific to ports than trying to do it in the base system. But I know a number of developers are playing with Rust and have, somebody has successfully built a FreeBSD kernel module in Rust. So it's something you can do. It's just, remember, it'll most likely live in the ports tree, not in the base system. But that's probably fine.
Yeah. So people might want to ask in the ports channels if there are more specific questions towards these languages, or if something is not working as they expecting it.
Yep.
Okay. I think that covers it. The next one, now I get the order right, is from George about the OGG feed, and he's not the only person having asked that question.
A number of people emailed about this. This was Jupiter Broadcasting decided that producing the OGG feed wasn't worth the time anymore. And they also dropped a couple of the different bit rates and so on. We'll have to remove the OGG feed link from our website, I guess. So yes, the OGG feed is not going to be updated anymore. Now that the patents on MP3 have expired, and in general, at least 85% of people are downloading the MP3 versus the OGG, so it just wasn't worth the time to continue to make both of these every week.
Mm. So yeah, we didn't forget it intentionally. It's just a change of, the back end and how many people are downloading those. So we removed that link from the webpage so you won't get tripped over and get outdated.
I've asked the production people to do one of the recommendations somebody else, when they wrote in about it, suggested, which is just a short OGG file added to the end of those RSS feeds explaining that this RSS feed isn't active anymore and you should go switch to the MP3 one or whatever.
Yeah. Don't just stop watching BSD Now just because there's no OGG file anymore.
Yeah.
That's not a good reason. Okay, I guess we covered that answer, and people stop wondering what happens here. And the next question is from Roller, which we support to actually go to BSDCan, and he already volunteered for a couple of activities there. So he writes there, hello, after watching and learning from BSD Now since it began a few years back, I've joined 2 local BSD user groups, Colorado BSD Users Group and Front Range BSD Users Group. It has been a great experience to meet like-minded individuals who love to learn about BSDs. Thanks for BSD Now, I have felt that I have a place in the FreeBSD community, well, everyone has basically, and that has driven him to join the BSD users group and even to fill out the travel grant application provided by the FreeBSD Foundation in order to attend my first BSD camp. You did it right. I just found out that I have been approved. Yes, I had a small part in that, I guess. For a travel grant to Canada for BSDCan, and I can hardly wait. One of my goals is to learn the ins and outs of the tools used to edit the FreeBSD handbook so that I can begin to help out there. Also, I volunteered to be part of the camera crew to help make sure that all of the talks get recorded. Thanks. That's been quite of a problem, but with people helping and volunteering to do that, that's helpful. Thanks for that. His question is, do you have any tips for the first-time BSDCan attendee? He lives in
For
Colorado.
you,
Yeah.
for him specifically, I would say the doc sprints, because they're specifically about getting people familiar with the tools and the process of updating the FreeBSD handbook, and those happen every night starting Wednesday, I think, right?
Yeah, it's on the schedule for free for
Hmm.
BSDCan, and so you don't have to know anything about ports or doc and whatever. We will walk you through the first basic steps because that's basically what we do with new mentees in the documentation tree as well, which is a good opportunity to do this directly, not without sending emails back and forth. And so a couple of people got their first patch ready on the second night they came there, but it's also individual, problems that people have getting started and answering questions and, getting to know the people directly and talking over the source code. So that's a good thing for newbies to go to.
Yep.
There's also
I
a,
think my biggest piece of advice that I wish I had my first couple of BSD cans is don't be shy. Introduce yourself to people and join conversations.
yeah, it's
I
difficult.
my first BSD can, I hung out with the one other person I knew there and only met like two other people. It's like there are
Yeah,
300 people at BSD can and I met two of them. I've done something wrong here. Um,
yeah, it
and then
can, yeah. But there is also, because sometimes you meet people that are like, they always get to be in their own group, and it's difficult for an outsider to get into that group or just say hi. Um, but if you see people in the hallways, say hi. There's a lot of stuff going on in the hallways. There's also a newbie orientation track, I think, on the first night before the first
mhm.
conference day. Where you can just drop in and ask everything you want to
Yeah,
know
so
about the whole
for that
conference.
one, it will help you meet a couple of people that know lots of people, and you can tell them a little bit about what things you're interested in, whether it's docs or embedded development or whatever, and they can help introduce you to a few people that are in those areas, and it'll give you someone to talk to about the thing you want to talk about. And once we get you started talking, we'll never shut you up.
Yeah.
It'll help you feel much more comfortable more quickly, and you'll then go to lots of conferences like we do.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to, if we have a booth there, the FreeBSD Foundation will have a booth there, obviously, and you can talk to us there. I will be there, of course, not all the time, but most of the time, I guess. And a couple of, well-known BSD folks will be around. And if you see them, or if there's a person in a BSD shirt with a little BSD daemon or a puffy on their shirt, then you will be
Well,
fine to.
you'll be in a slightly better position than I was because you've met some people already with the Front Range and the Colorado BSD user group. So you know a couple of people, and they can help introduce you to people and so on. But the newbie thing will be very useful to you, and I recommend making the time to go to that.
Mhm.
Um,
Other
yeah.
than that, there's the Hacker Lounge.
Mhm.
That might be something.
So
So that's running in.
that kind of gets into his second question. So you want to read that?
Okay. So he says he lives in Colorado, USA, and have never been to Canada before. Well, there's the first time for everything. Should I bring my Onion Omega? Do you anticipate me having
The
any
Omega
issues
is
bringing
small enough;
electronics?
it'll
Yeah.
be fine. It's not a big deal. I wouldn't be too worried about it. You know, um,
Yeah.
in general.
I had no problem.
So the security you go through will be in the TSA before you get on the plane in Colorado. Um, there's not all that much that's going to happen when you actually land in Canada.
Yeah, they have this new electronic QR
Travel
code
authorization.
generation check-in kiosk thing. I will check out that one, which will be nice because that speeds up the whole, immigration
Yes.
process.
No longer having to fill out that little paper card on the airplane will be super time saving.
Mhm. Yeah, that's something to look for.
So yeah, I wouldn't worry about
Other than that,
complications from bringing in Onion Omega. Was it a couple years ago? Sean Bruno brought his soldering kit on the airplane with him, so it'll be fine. Um, yeah, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. But yeah, so with the Hacker Lounge, you'll be able to. There'll be a bunch of people working on things like that. And if you want to bring yours along, I know we had quite a Raspberry Pi party the other year, and then 2
yeah,
years ago we had the routers, and we soldered on serial headers and so on, and reflashed a bunch of them. Lots of fun stuff.
yeah. I will try to bring some hardware. bought a couple of, or just one, a little 7-inch screen for the Raspberry Pi Zero, and I
Ooh,
need to get
nice.
that working because there's some strange things going on the display itself, and I need to talk to people who have more knowledge in that area than I do. Yeah, but definitely bring a laptop and a cell phone because people, hang out in the lobbies and in the hacker lounge having a drink and do some important stuff or sometimes very productive stuff actually on the laptops, or just hang out and talk to each other and.
If you think you can get by with just one laptop, that's fine.
Yeah, Alan usually brings two because
Yes.
why not?
Well, I need the one I can break and the one I need to do my talk.
Yeah, redundancy is important there. And for the conference itself, basically make a little schedule. So what I usually do is I look at the schedule up front and decide which talks I want to be at. The one thing you always want to be at is at the opening, and you also want to
Yes.
be at the closing because that's going to be where
Ah,
the
for the ones in
option
the
is going to
middle, I
be.
would say don't worry about missing a talk. If you're having a good conversation with someone in the hallway that or whatever, then it's perfectly fine to keep doing that. You don't have to only go to talks. Talking to the other people and being interactive is more important than what you'll learn in the individual talks because those videos will be online later and you can always go download them.
Right. It's always me doing a plan and then deviating a lot from it because
Yeah.
I get into interesting discussions and
Well, you
I
have
run
no
late to
idea what we're
talks
going to
and
do to you now. We have a
yeah.
podcast to do.
Yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, it's a good time and I think you should mostly enjoy yourself and because it's all new for you anyway and you might as well make the whole thing a big
Yes.
learning experience.
Prepping
But
tip: sleep lots before you come because you're not going to sleep much while you're there.
yeah, the nights can get a little bit long. Don't
And
overdo it on the
we start
first night.
early in the morning.
You see people just randomly knocking off and napping down on their laptops and don't get up for a couple of minutes before the power runs out or the snoring starts. There have been interesting events. As long as the
Yeah.
conference goes, the longer it goes. Yeah. So for
Well, we
everyone who
look
goes
forward to
to
seeing you
BSD
there.
Can,
So, number one tip is make sure you
yeah,
come introduce yourself to us.
yeah, you know us already. You see our faces every week, and yeah, it's easier for you to find us than we find you because there's a lot of new people there and people who want to talk to us.
And if you know Brad and other people that are coming, so you know.
Yeah, there's lots of people to meet. And
Yep.
the year after, if you go to the one after that, there will always be people you saw last year, and there will be new people, and then you can work from that and continue build your BSD network.
Well, we hope you have a good
Cool.
time, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, it's only a couple of weeks.
I know. Lots of work to do.
Until then, yeah, there's still a lot of stuff needed to be prepared and
Well, the
set up.
code freeze for 11.1 is like Friday.
Yeah, we need some MFCing to do because otherwise it won't be in
Yeah,
that release.
if you don't have anything else to do, I still need to do the man page for the changes to top.
Right. It shouldn't be too difficult. It's just a
No,
matter
it's
of
like one
describing
thing,
the
so I
new
just got to get
fields.
around to it.
Yeah.
All
But yeah,
right.
that's for us.
Thanks everybody for watching. If you have any questions, comments, show ideas, topics, stories, volunteering, interviewing, voluntolding, whatever, it's feedback@bsdnow.tv.
Yeah. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
And cut. So now.
Huh? Yeah, I can. What? Ha! Fixed it. Mm. Yeah, this disturbed me. Yeah. By the way, I can do this right now because I have written up my little notes and ready. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's for the Yeah. Okay. Well, it's actually easier putting it there than in the IRC. Yeah. Yeah. Ooh. Well, but the chat room is busy as always. Oh, we're good on time, I guess. Yeah. This week on the show, we're going to cover the FreeBSD status report for the first quarter of 2017, show you a plan for open source software development, and give you also a centrally managed Beehive idea with Ansible, libvirt, and package SSH. Everything in a whole new show this week, right now on BSD Now. Right now on BSD Now. Two nows in one sentence. Well, anyway. uh, hmm. I plan for open source software. Oh, maintainers, yeah. Oh, well. Yeah, I think it's good enough. I had better intros, but yeah, it works. No obvious mistakes. Mm-hmm.
All right then. We're done.
Cool. Wow, record time. We're getting better over the years.
1 hour and 32 minutes. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, the interviews would have extended it a little bit more, but we'll get better. We get into the flow. Or I will get. Alan is already in the flow for a couple of shows.
Well, I was off a bit this week with the whole hearing myself thing.
Yeah, but if the audio quality is better now, or the...
Yeah, well, I think I have an idea how to make it work with a splitter. So, taking the audio out of the sound card, instead of making it go out the video card via the HDMI, I'll make it go out the sound card like it used to. Split it, send one copy to the analog input on the capture card beside the HDMI cable, and it should be in sync. And then the other half of the splitter can go back to my headphones, and then I can hear you and the other person on Skype, but not myself. And that would be super useful.
Mm-hmm.
Although apparently if I update the software Wirecast that we use to do the compositing, it apparently has a mix minus mode now where I can mute myself in the studio headphones.
In case you don't want to hear yourself. Yeah.
But we'll see. I don't know what I'll have time to do in time for next week, but I'll really want to do something because that was terrible.
Yeah, I can imagine this is not very pleasant to do over a couple of minutes even. Well, as long as the chat is happy, then everyone's happy.
Okay, we're done. See you next week.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Yep, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Start with the easy way and then work towards the hard problems like replacing a knit and stuff like that.